Ever look for a place to live and find one that's just too good to be true? The rent is way below market. The location is perfect. It's got everything you need. You might wonder, what's the catch? Well, for Alex, a young writer just trying to make it in the big city, the catch wasn't just a leaky faucet or noisy neighbors. It was something far, far worse. This is the story of apartment 9B. When Alex first saw the listing, Etho Adig hit the jackpot. A spacious one-bedroom for a price that was practically a giveaway. Ehumpedonit, ignoring the slight hesitation in the landlord's voice. And a strange, pitying looks from the other tenants in the building as he moved his boxes in. He was too excited to care. He had his own place, a sanctuary where he could finally finish his novel. The apartment itself was old, no doubt about it. The wallpaper was peeling in the corners, revealing layers of patterns from decades past. The floorboards groaned with every step, and there was a persistent, musty smell he couldn't quite place. Most peculiar of all was a spot in the middle of the living room. A spot that was always cold. Not who's cool, but unnervingly, bitingly cold. No matter how high he cranked the heat, Alex chalked it up to poor insulation. A quirk of an old building. He was a rational guy, after all. There was a logical explanation for everything. He set up his desk by the large window overlooking the street, his laptop and stacks of notes ready to go. The first few days were peaceful, productive even. The city hummed below, a comforting backdrop to his creative process. But then, the nights began to change. It started subtly. Faint whispers, like the tail end of a conversation, seeming to come from just behind him. He'd spin around, but there was nothing there. Just the empty, moonlit room. He'd blame it on the wind, on the old pipes, on his own overworked mind. Writers are prone to flights of fancy, he told himself. He was just tired. Then, small objects started to move. A pen he'd left on his desk would be on the floor in the morning. A book he was certain he'd placed on the coffee table would appear back on the bookshelf. He started to feel a constant, nagging sense of being watched. A prickling on the back of his neck that made the hair stand on end. He'd catch fleeting movements in his peripheral vision. A flicker of a shadow in a doorway. A dark shape that would vanish the moment he turned his head to look directly at it. Sleep became a luxury. The whispers grew more frequent, more insistent, though he still couldn't make out the words. They were a constant, unsettling murmur just below the threshold of hearing. He felt a growing paranoia, a sense of dread that settled deep in his gut. He started double-checking the locks on his door, peering through the peephole before opening it, jumping at every creak and groan of the old building. His writing suffered. He couldn't focus. The words wouldn't come. His sanctuary had become a source of anxiety. He spent his days in coffee shops, trying to escape the oppressive atmosphere of his own home, only to have to return to it each night. He was exhausted, on edge, and starting to question his own sanity. Was he just cracking under the pressure? One afternoon, desperate for a distraction, he decided to talk to his neighbors. He started with Mr. Henderson, an elderly man who had lived in the building for over 40 years. When Alex mentioned he was in 9B, the old man's friendly demeanor vanished. A cloud passed over his face. "You're in the old woman's place," he said, his voice low. "Be careful, son. That apartment, it holds on to things." Intrigued and unnerved, Alex pressed for more. Mr. Henderson reluctantly told him about the previous tenant, a reclusive woman named Alara. She had lived there for decades, never speaking to anyone. Her windows always covered. People in the building whispered about her. They said she was into strange things, dark things. There were rumors of odd chants coming from her apartment at night, of strange symbols drawn on her door that the landlord would hastily paint over. She had passed away in the apartment, alone. It was weeks before anyone found her. A cold dread washed over Alex. He went back to his apartment, the landlord's haste to rent it out suddenly making a terrifying kind of sense. It went online, diving into local archives and old news articles, searching for anything about Alara or apartment 9B. What he found made his blood run cold. He discovered articles about local folklore, about dark rituals and entities that could be tethered to a place through specific incantations. One article mentioned a ritual that allowed a spirit to remain, to seek a new host, a new vessel to experience the world again. It described the initial signs, whispers, moving objects, shadowy apparitions, all matching his experience exactly. That night, everything escalated. The whispers were no longer faint murmurs. They were clear, right in his ear. "Get out!" a dry, raspy voice hissed. Then, a slam echoed through the apartment. The bedroom door had violently swung shut. Alex's heart hammered against his ribs. He scrambled for the door, but the knob wouldn't turn. It was locked from the other side. Panic set in. He pounded on the door, screaming for help. But his voice was swallowed by the sudden, oppressive silence of the apartment. He turned, and there, in the corner of the room, the shadow he'd been glimpsing for weeks began to coalesce. It was no longer a fleeting shape. It was taking form, solidifying. The vague outline sharpened, becoming the hunched, frail figure of an old woman. Her face was a blur of darkness, but he could feel her malevolent gaze fixed on him. "This is my home," the voice whispered, this time not in his ear, but from the figure itself. It was a chilling, possessive sound that seemed to vibrate through the very floorboards. The lights flickered and died, plunging the room into near-total darkness, illuminated only by the faint glow of the city outside. The figure glided towards him, not walking, but floating. An unnatural, silent movement. Alex stumbled backward, crashing into his desk, his mind screaming. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. He was trapped, a prisoner in his own home, with a malevolent entity that wanted him gone. Or worse. The following hours were a blur of terror. Doors slammed, objects flew across the room, and the chilling whispers were a constant torment, promising him he would never leave. He huddled in a corner, waiting for the sun, praying for the nightmare to end. When dawn finally broke, casting weak light into the room, the activity stopped. Silence returned. Trembling, Alex tried the bedroom door. It opened with a simple click. He cautiously stepped out into the living room. Everything was a mess. Books were torn, furniture was overturned, but the shadowy figure was gone. He felt a strange calm settle over him, an exhaustion so profound it felt like peace. He stumbled into the bathroom, splashing cold water on his face. He needed to get out. He needed to leave and never look back. He slowly raised his head and looked at his reflection in the mirror above the sink. His own tired, terrified face stared back at him. But then, something shifted. It was subtle at first. The lines around his eyes seemed to deepen, his mouth twisted. The reflection wasn't just his anymore. It was changing. His features began to warp, to age, to melt into someone else's. He watched in horror as his own reflection was replaced by the face of an old woman. Her skin was wrinkled and pale. Her eyes were dark, hollow pits. And then the reflection smiled. It was not his smile. It was a slow, cruel, triumphant grin that spread across her face, a look of pure malevolence and victory. The camera zooms in on the mirror, on the old woman's smiling face where Alex's should be. Alex, the man, is gone. And in apartment 9B, a new tenant has just settled in. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more chills. We'll see you in the next one.